It is in your booklet. You can all join together in chanting the Shanti Mantra. Om Apyayantu mamangani Vak pranaschakshushotram Atobalam indriyani ca sarvani Sarvam brahma upanishadam Maham brahma nirakuryam Ma brahma nirakarot Anirakaranamastu Anirakaranam me astu Tadatmani nirateya upanishatsu dharmaste Mahi santu Te mahi santu Om Shanti 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 Om. May my limbs, speech, breath, eye, ear, strength and all senses become perfected. Everything is the Brahman proclaimed in the Upanishads. May I never deny Brahman. May Brahman never reject me. May there be no rejection. May there be no rejection at all. As I am engaged in knowing that Atman, may I be endowed with all the virtues taught in the Upanishads. May all those virtues come to me. Om, peace, peace, peace. This Shanti Mantra has 4 parts in it. The first part is a prayer for strength and harmony in our lives. Swami Vivekananda very often emphasized the importance of strength, and strength is what the Upanishads teach. So if you are not strong enough, moral strength, physical strength also, we will not be able to achieve anything worthwhile. So prayer for strength is the first part. May all parts of my personality, our personality is made up of many different parts, not one thing. Speech, vital force, sense organs, mind, all these things have to be strong, and they must function in perfect harmony. Then we can do something meaningful with our bodies and minds. That is the first part of this prayer, Shanti Mantra, prayer for strength. The second part is an affirmation that this whole physical universe is nothing other than the ultimate reality called Brahman in the Upanishads. Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam. What we are experiencing with our minds through the sense organs, the whole cosmos, universe, is that reality Brahman itself appearing in this way from our present perspective. This is the theme of the Upanishads. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, says the Chandogya Upanishad. This whole universe is Brahman itself. Why it is to be mentioned here is that is the ultimate truth. And the purpose of human life is to experience that truth. We are not what we think we are. We think we are the body and we are the mind, we are the ego. That is ignorance, that is not knowledge. We have to know our true nature. Our true nature is divinity, divine. We are all potentially divine. Swamiji says, each soul is potentially divine. We are that divine. Even now, we have always been, we are now, we will always be. There will be nothing else. But that knowledge is not with us now. We are experiencing only the limited version of that divinity, namely the body and divine. So to know our true nature, experience our divine nature, or perfect nature, that is the goal of life. And we should always keep that in mind. Whatever else we are doing, we should never forget that we should achieve that goal of self-knowledge, Atma Jnana, knowledge of the self. That is why at every possible opportunity we have to remind ourselves that this whole universe, all of us, are nothing other than Brahman. Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam. May I not reject this truth. It is possible to dismiss this. Upanishad says all this is Brahman. But it is not enough. We may say, no, this is all some old ancient, some scripture somebody wrote. How do you know it is true? It may have been true for some people. Is it true for all of us? Is it true even now in the 21st century? That kind of doubt arises in our mind. So we should take it as a starting hypothesis for our spiritual life. As a starting position for a spiritual life, and if you follow the spiritual life, following the instructions of the teachers and the scriptures, you will be able to reach that goal. If you dismiss that, then you will be staying where we are in perpetual ignorance. We don't want that. That's why this affirmation is necessary. Maham Brahma Nirakuryam, Mama Brahma Nirakaru. May there be no rejection of this truth. Anirakaranamastu, Anirakaranam me astu. Nirakaranam is rejection. We should not reject this truth. We should accept it as a starting point, as a hypothesis, and then proceed to follow the spiritual practices. Then eventually we will be able to experience directly the truth. Until that goal is reached, we should not relent. That's why this frequent affirmation is necessary. The last part of this prayer is, of this Shanti Mantra, is prayer for all the virtues described in the Upanishads. First of all, we should become virtuous. Our personality must be completely, totally free from blemishes, such as lust, anger, greed, pride, jealousy, fear. All those things are limitations, impurities in our mind. We have to clean up our mind. And we have to become virtuous persons. We should first become gentlemen, Swami Yatiswananda says. Then only we can do other things. So prayer for virtue. What are the virtues described in the Upanishads? Truthfulness, strength, purity, straightforwardness, celibacy. All these virtues are described in the various scriptures, in the Upanishads, in the Gita, other places. We have to practice those virtues and we have to become virtuous. Then only we can achieve something meaningful in our life. So prayer for virtues. That's the last part. Tadatmani nirate mai. In me who is engaged in knowing that Atman. Ye dharma Upanishatsu. Those virtues which are in the Upanishads. Te dharma mai santu. May all those virtues come to me. So that is the prayer. And then Om Shanti 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 3 times, because the ancient rishis thought about all aspects of human life. We should not get the impression that they were sitting under a tree or in a hermitage in the forest thinking about God all the time. No, they thought about every aspect of human life. Nothing was left. And then they found out that the sufferings, adversity that we go through in our lives seems to come from 3 sources. Most of the problems that we experience in our life are caused by ourselves. Because our minds are not pure, our thinking is not always correct. We create problems for ourselves. Those problems which we ourselves create by doing and saying things which are improper, those are called adhyatmika tapa. Tapa means heat or suffering. So we don't want to do that. We should not create any problem for ourselves. So we need peace and harmony within us. Adhyatmika Shanti, peace within us. Then sometimes some difficulty, some problem seems to come from outside sources, from other people, from animals and plants. That kind of problem is known as Adi Bhautika Tapa. Difficulty or problems arising from outside sources. That is also we don't want. So there must be harmony among all of us. You don't want any problem for other people. You don't want any problem for animals and plants. Then still there is a third kind of problem, suffering that comes from imbalances in nature, natural calamities such as earthquake, lightning, volcanic eruptions, floods, no rain, drought, forest fires, these things, tsunami, these things cause problem. We don't want that. There must be peace in nature. That is Adi Daivika Shanti. That's why every time we say a peace chant, we say Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May there be peace within us, may there be peace and harmony amongst all beings, and may there be peace in nature. So that is the Shanti mantra. Now the topic, the subject we chose, I doubt whether I chose the right topic considering my limitations of my own knowledge and the limitation of time we have. But anyhow, we have decided to study some passages from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. This is the biggest of all the Upanishads. Brihad is very big. Aranyaka means those days the people who were seriously seeking self-knowledge, they used to repair to the forest, Vanaprastha Ashrama, and they didn't want to be disturbed by all the disturbances in city life. So many distractions and movements and actions and noise went away, because contemplation on the self requires a peaceful atmosphere. So these studies are done in the Aranya, means forest, Aranyaka. Aranyaka is a part of the Vedas. Upanishad, the meaning of Upanishad is given there. It's made up of three parts. Upa means sitting near. A student seeking self-knowledge must sit down at the feet of the teacher who has self-knowledge. Qualifications for teacher are very, very stringent. Such a teacher and a qualified student. Such a student must approach the teacher, and with humility that the student must sit down at the feet of the teacher. Upa means close. Sometimes in modern times we learn things in different ways. Whole programs of study can be done by computer. We don't need to go to a classroom. There is no teacher standing there giving lecture. Online courses. This is okay for certain fields of study. You can study certain things in that way. That's all right. But for this study, self-knowledge, to know our true nature, to experience our divine nature, we need to be in the vicinity of an enlightened teacher. Upa means sitting close to the feet of the teacher. Ni means nischayena. This teaching which is in the Upanishads is certain to remove the ignorance and bring us self-knowledge. There is a unquestioned certainty about this knowledge in the Upanishads. Unlike in some other fields, if the subject itself keeps changing. Today we hear something, tomorrow we hear the exactly opposite of that one. Not in the Upanishad. Knowledge of the self is final and there is no change in it. Once we get that knowledge, it is certain to give us our understanding, our self-knowledge, the certainty. That certainty is there in the Upanishad, the knowledge in Vedanta. It may or may not be there in some other field. For example, things keep changing because as our understanding widens and broadens, our knowledge also gives to change. In certain fields, it has to change. There is a lot of advancement going on in scientific research in various fields. But in regard to knowledge of the self, that does not change at all. The certainty, it will remove the ignorance and give us self-knowledge. Nischayena. Shat means it is going to destroy the ignorance once and for all. The ignorance says that we are the body and the mind. I am this person. I am such and such a person. I am a doctor. I am an engineer. I am a student. I am a male. I am a female. I am an American. I am this. I am that. That we have a very distorted, limited view of our true nature. Who are we? Upanishad says, you are that. Tattvamasi. Aham Brahmasmi. That is true knowledge. So that knowledge has to be gained by removing the ignorance under which we are suffering. With certainty, this ignorance will be removed once for all. That knowledge is contained in the Upanishad. That's why it's called Upanishad. Upanishads are the last part of the Vedas. The Vedas generally have four, but these are not exclusively separate compartments. There are a lot of overlapping. The first part of the Upanishad, generally called Samhita. Samhita portion contains hymns to various deities. The second part is Samhita Brahmana. There the description of rituals and the description, explanation of their metaphysical significance. Then comes the Aranyaka. Aranyaka is that portion which helps the Vanaprastha people to contemplate on the ultimate reality. And the last portion is the Upanishad, the experience of the great sages, ancient sages, as explained as much as they could explain in words, their experience of the divine. That is in the form of questions and answers, sometimes in the form of Upadesha statements, teachings. That is the Upanishad. Now this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad comes in the Krishna Yajurveda. Krishna Yajurveda, there is a part called Shatapatha Brahmana. Part of Krishna Yajurveda. A part of Shatapatha Brahmana is the Upanishad. I read somewhere that there are two separate recensions, versions of this Upanishad. One in the Madhyam. We don't have to know all these things. This all extra information we don't have to know, but since I read somewhere I'm sharing with you. Madhyandhina and then Kanva. The Kanva Rishi explained the Upanishad, and that in that Kanva recension, this Upanishad come. That's for that Upanishad Shankara is written commentary. That's what we are going to study now. Then this Upanishad has 3 parts. It has 6 chapters divided into 3 parts. First part of the Upanishad, first 2 chapters generally, they contain, it's called Madhukanda. We don't have to know all these things since it is there, I am mentioning them. These are descriptions of certain rituals which generally we don't study. Only last part of Madhukanda there is the conversation between Yajnavalkya and Maitri that we are going to study. Then the middle part is the most important part. That's where we all study about the middle part. It's called Yajnavalkya Kanda. It's also called Muni Kanda. The second 2 chapters 3 and 4 in the Upanishad. Yajnavalkya Kanda is the main teaching of the Upanishad. That's where you find the main teaching of the Upanishad. The greatest sage Yajnavalkya, he was known to be the greatest knower of truth at that time. And the middle part contains conversations, questions and answers between Yajnavalkya and many other sages. Some of those names are mentioned there. Maitreyi, Uddalaka, Ushasta, those names are. Those are all the various people who met Yajnavalkya in scholarly meetings, asked him very difficult questions, and he was able to satisfactorily answer all their questions to their satisfaction. That is what we see in the Yajnavalkya Kanda. We will study only a small portion of this one. The third part is called Khila Kanda, which we don't study, is not of interest to us. It is of interest to householders, and that is not what we are going to study. Generally we don't study that third part, Khila Kanda, we don't study. This is not of interest to us and in the present context. So that is the introduction. Then in the box there are 4 things. Whenever we study a book, need not be Upanishad, any book if you study, if you take a textbook on physics or computer science or history or archaeology, 4 things have to be noticed about that book. First thing is Vishaya. What is the subject matter of this book? These 4 things are called Anubandha Chatushtayam. First thing we have to know about what is this book about, subject matter of this book, what is this book talking about. The Vishaya in this Upanishad and all Upanishads is the same, namely knowledge of this, knowledge of Brahman, Brahma-jnana or Atma-jnana. That is the subject matter of all the Upanishads. That is subject matter. One thing we have to notice about this book. If you are interested in something else, then this will not contain that one. It only contains knowledge of this self, Brahma-jnana, Atma-jnana. Then second part of this, second question we have to ask is, what is the benefit of studying this book? What will we gain by knowing, by studying Brihadaranyaka Upanishad? That question we have to ask when you study any other book also. What is the benefit? What do we get by studying this book? By studying this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, we get self-knowledge. The prayojana means benefit that we derive by studying this Upanishad is revelation of our true divine nature. Not revelation means experiencing. Not only theoretically reading we are Brahman, anybody can say I am Brahman. But that does not mean anything. But we have to actually experience our divine nature. That is the use of this. That's towards that ultimate goal, this book helps us to reach that goal. That is prayojana. Third thing is anubandha. In what way does this book help us to reach that goal? How does it reach us to, how does it help us, this book help us to reach the goal of self-knowledge? In the form of questions and answers, in the form of instructions, upadesha, the knowledge of self is presented by various sages, notably by Yajnavalkya in this Upanishad. In the form of explanation, in the form of questions and answers, in the form of instructions, the knowledge of self is presented. That is the third part. The last one is adhikara. Adhikara means the prerequisite. What prerequisites do we have to have in order to benefit from the study of this Upanishad? When you take any course in the university, it requires a prerequisite. If you want to take advanced calculus, you should have taken pre-calculus and other calculus. If you want to take physics, you should have taken algebra and mathematics, all this. Like the prerequisites are there. What is the prerequisite for benefiting by studying the Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka or any Upanishad? That is sadhana chatushtayam. I didn't write it there. Sadhana chatushtayam. That we studied in earlier meetings, so I'm not going to repeat it. Some of you were there. 4 disciplines have to be practiced before we can start studying any Upanishad. Not only this, any Upanishad. The disciplines are called sadhana chatushtayam. Chatushtayam is group of 4 disciplines. Some of you know all of these things because we studied them before, and those disciplines are described in the book Viveka Chudamani, which we also studied sometime earlier. Viveka Chudamani has 584 verses. Verses 17 to 30 in the Viveka Chudamani, they contain a description of the 4 sadhana, spiritual disciplines which we have to have practiced before we can start study of any Upanishad. Briefly they are, first of one is Viveka. Other 4 disciplines. First is Viveka. Viveka means we should have a fairly clear understanding of the difference between what is real, permanent, infinite, eternal, unchanging, as opposed to what is ephemeral, changing, transient, and not of much intrinsic value. What we in our daily life consider important, generally an ordinary person considers important what things a person wants to have happiness in life, person wants to have education, a person wants to have a good family life, husband and wife and children, he or she wants to have a good job, position, power, wants to have wealth, money, possessions, car, house, all these things, they bring happiness. This is what we generally seek for happiness. But all of these things, while they do seem to bring some happiness from time to time, they are very temporary and there is no certainty about them. Today everything may be alright, but to the next moment things may change in the twinkling of an eye. So we can't depend upon them. They are not the sources of happiness, though they appear to be at times. That is all the unreal part. As opposed to this, there is something which is intrinsic within us, the divine presence within us. That's what the Upanishad says. That's what the Bhagavad Gita, all scriptures, Vedanta scriptures say. That divinity is inherently present within us. It has always been there, though we have not been able to experience its presence. It is there now, it will always be there. We are that. It's not something that we have, we are truly that divine. That is the real thing. We have to seek that and not pursue the unreal things. Pursuing the unreal things, pursuing wealth, money, fame, sensory pleasures and all these things, while it is satisfying to some extent, that is not going to help us to gain self-knowledge. Sometimes there are obstructions to self-knowledge. So one has to have a very clear understanding of the distinction of what is real, what is permanent, what is intrinsic, what I truly am. That we should seek. And all these other things that generally we seek in life, they may be necessary to some extent at some stage in life. It's okay to have. They don't condemn it completely. For some people it's necessary, majority people, but they are not going to be with us. That distinction is called Viveka. This is the main thing to study Vedanta. Main requisite to study Vedanta, even Bhagavad Gita and Upanishad, is clear understanding of what is true, what is permanent, what is eternal, what is intrinsic, what does not change, what is our true nature. That as opposed to all the external things that generally people seek. That's first prerequisite, Viveka. The second prerequisite is Sadhana Chatushtayam, Vairagyam. Vairagyam is even more difficult. A firm decision, determination to reject all these unreal, temporary, ephemeral things that promise a lot and deliver little, and pursue what is truly eternal, intrinsic and permanent. It is all, in other words, Vairagyam means developing detachment towards worldly things, objects and experiences, and pursuing our true nature, knowledge of our true nature, Vairagyam. We are not going to deal with all these things right now because it's not the main topic, though it will come in the passages we are going to study. The third discipline is a group of 6 practices. Samadhamadi Shatka Sampatti. Shama means tranquility of the mind. Our mind becomes easily disturbed when some things happen. We should try to remain calm through all the vicissitudes that are inevitable in human life. Calmness of mind, tranquility of the mind, first thing. Second is Dhamma. Dhamma is control of sense organs. We have 10 sense organs. 5 sense organs of perception, Jnanendriyas. 5 sense organs of action, Karmendriyas, motor organs. All of them are pulling us in 10 different directions. We have to gather all of them and focus their energy, attention towards one goal, namely reaching the goal of self-knowledge. That is controlling sense organs, Samadhamma. Third one is Titiksha. Titiksha means the ability to bear calmly, without lamenting and without brooding, without anxiety, the vicissitudes that are inevitable in human life. Everybody's life, including the lives of very great people, saints, incarnate, they all have difficulties of some sort or the other. But one should try to remain as calm as possible during those difficult times. Titiksha, bear all the difficulties, suffering, without lamenting. Chinta vilaparahitam. Chinta means brooding. Oh, this happened, all past things that happened, and present is happening now, this difficulty, that difficulty, and future imagining worst case scenarios that may happen. That we should not do. It's counterproductive to our spiritual life. Vilapa means lamentation, telling everybody our problems. So that is Titiksha, forbearance. Samadhamma Titiksha. Third thing is Uparati. Uparati means training the sense organs from their tendency to go outwards, seeking contact with sense objects and directing them towards the self became Uparati. Training the sense organs and the mind from their tendency to go outwards into the world, seeking enjoyment through sense objects and bringing them back to the self. That is Uparati. Samadhamati Diksha Uparati. Shraddha. Shraddha means a certain degree of conviction we have to have. In what? Conviction that what the scriptures say, not all scriptures, Shruti, Upanishads. What the Upanishad says, Gita also is same as what the Upanishads. What they say, what they have said, based on their experience. They were not theoretical philosophers who wrote so many books and said something. They were all spoke about a direct experience only. What the rishis have said in the Upanishad and what the illumined teacher says based on his experience, that depicts the truth. That initial Shraddha faith we have to have as the basis for our spiritual life. Then what happens? What starts as a hypothesis becomes our experience, then there is no doubt. When we ourselves experience the ultimate truth, when we ourselves experience our divine nature, then all the doubts will disappear. Chidyante sarva samshaya Upanishad says. All doubts will disappear when you experience it. Until then some doubt may linger. Let it be. But we have to have this conviction that this is the right path. What the Upanishad says, what the illumined teachers say, that is the truth, and I have to experience it, and I have to proceed along the lines as directed by them. That is Shraddha. The last of the 6 disciplines is Samadhanam. There is a camera there or here? Or
camera is here.
no. Samadhanam means constantly keeping the goal of human life in our mind. We do so many things, we have to do so many different things in our daily life. We have to go to work and cook and clean and take care of children, pay the bills, those things everybody has to do. But in the midst of all these activities, one thing has to be always in the back of our mind. What is the purpose of my life? Why am I here? What's the goal of my life? What am I supposed to achieve as a human being? Being born as a human being, what am I supposed to do with this human life? Precious gift, this human life. That is to know our true nature. That goal of knowing our true nature, our goal of experiencing our self-knowledge, our divine nature, that should be kept always in mind, in front of us. No matter what else we are doing. That constant recollection of the goal is called Samadhana. These are the 4 disciplines. These are prerequisites. So we are considered 4 things we have considered. After having done this one, now we go to some passages from the Upanishad. This is a very huge Upanishad, 6 chapters, very thick book. We have very limited time and also very limited knowledge. That's a greater limitation. But with my limited knowledge and limited time we have chosen a few passages. We'll study those. The first passage on page 1, so let me make a digression. There are some typos. I usually do this work late at night. I'm a night person. So on page 12 there are 2, correct them. Then if you find something else, let me know. Make a correction in your copies on page 12. In this passage 342 in the Nagari Sanskrit version, English version I have not seen. 342 on the last page. Which one is the mistake? Hari.
First, to repeat it.
What's the typo in the first line?
Sasa hovacha.
Ho vacha. Va must be dirgha. It says ho vacha. That's one mistake. There may be others. Second line, last letter. Te must become me. Te means to you, me means to me. Ushasta as Yajnavalkya teach me, so it must be me. If you find some other mistake, let me know. So we'll go to the first page. Yajnavalkya and Maitreyi conversation. This is a very interesting story also. This great sage Yajnavalkya, this Upanishad contains a great deal of his teachings. He is the main person. Yajnavalkya had debates with all those people. Their names are listed, they don't have to know them. They all asked the difficult questions to test his knowledge, and they answered all their questions to their satisfaction. His teachings are here. The first thing that happened was, this Yajnavalkya was a householder. And he had 2 wives. Those days I think it was okay to have more than 1 wife. One wife's name was Maitreyi, another wife's name was Katyayini. He was living householder's life with those 2 lives. At some point, he decided to go for Vanaprastha Ashrama. Vanaprastha Ashrama is the 3rd ashrama. First ashrama is Brahmacharya Ashrama, student life. Second ashrama is stage of life. Grihastha Ashrama, householder's phase. 3rd is Vanaprastha Ashrama. 4th is Sannyasa Ashrama. At that time, no family, no pursuit, nothing. Sannyasa Ashrama. And the last stage of our spiritual journey is only one person. We walk in single file. Until then you can have some fellow students and companions, not in the sannyasa ashrama. So the Yajnavalkya decided to go for sannyasa ashrama. That means he has to give up all this household property. Those days they were having lot of cattle. How many heads of cattle a person had was the indicator of wealth. Today they measure wealth by dollars. How many millions or billions of them. Those days, how did they measure a person's wealth? How rich he was? By the number of cattle he had. A lot of cattle accumulated. Every time he won in a debate, he would be given some prize in the form of cattle and gold coins. He had a lot of gold coins also. That was how he was rewarded for his scholarship, for his knowledge. Accumulated a lot of wealth. And 2 wives. So he decided, I will go to Vanaprastha Ashrama now. That means I have to give up all this property, everything, house, everything, money, gold, coins and cattle, everything has to be given up. So you can only go to the forest carrying nothing with you. So he calls his 2 wives, Maitreyi, Katyayini. Then he says, I have decided to go for Vanaprastha Ashrama. Time has come for me to go to the 3rd phase of life. Now, I love you, both of you, very much. You have been very kind to me. I have to terminate this householder's phase of life. Now, each of you have 2 options. You can either decide to go with me, or you can decide to stay back in the family, keeping the property, house, cattle, money, everything. You can keep, you can stay here, or you may go with me. If you go with me, you cannot take anything. If you stay here, you can keep all these things. He gives them choice, which one you will like. Katyayini decided, I will stay here. I don't want to go to the forest. I will stay in the house. I will keep the cattle and the money. I am not interested in going to the forest with you. I will stay. She decided that was decided. But Maitreyi had, she cogitated. What is the benefit of going to the forest? And what will I get if I stay back here? So she was thinking how to make this decision. Very thoughtful person, Maitreyi. So Maitreyi asked this question. Let us go to the class here, 241 and page 1. Maitreyi iti hovacha Yajnavalkya Ujyasyan va are aham atmasthanadasmi hantate anaya katyainya antam karvani iti. He said, Yajnavalkya said, Maitreyi, my dear, I am going to renounce this life. Allow me to conclude my relationship with you and Katyayini. There cannot be no more husband-wife relationship in Vanaprastha Ashrama. That phase has to be stopped. So he says, I have decided to go. Now you have to make up your mind. Sahovacha Maitreyi 242. Yannama iyam bhavo sarva prithivi vittena purna syat katam tena mritasyamiti neti hovacha yajnavalkyaha yathaiva upakarnavatam jeevitam tathaiva te jeevitam syat. Then comes one of the greatest sentences in all the Upanishads. I printed it in bold face there. Amritatvasya nashasti vittena. This is a very interesting statement. Then Maitreyi thereupon said, Sir, if indeed this whole earth full of wealth be mine, shall I be immortal through that? She says, supposing I keep this house, the property, the cattle and the gold coin, everything that you have accumulated, I keep all of them. Even if I become very rich, in control of all the wealth that the whole world has, what benefit will I get? Will I become immortal? No, says Yajnavalkya. Like all other people, rich people, billionaires who have all kinds of comforts. Billionaires can buy whatever they want because so much money they have, they can lead a comfortable life, they can hire a lot of people to serve them, have their own building, 40 million all the buildings somebody has in Mumbai, with so many facilities and people who they can hire to work for them. That facility you will have. He says, no, replied Yajnavalkya, your life will be just like that of people who have plenty of things. Yataiva upakarnavatam jeevitam. Upakarnavatam means people have everything, lot of wealth, they can buy whatever they want. You will be very comfortable, he says. Then she asked, will I become immortal? Will money grant me immortality? Then he says, this very important statement he makes. Amritatvasya nashasti vittena iti. Vitta means money. Vitta means money. Money and anything that money can buy. Even if you have unlimited amount of money, billions and billions of dollars of money, you can buy whatever you want, but it will not grant you immortality. You will be limited to the body-mind level of life. One day the body will die and nothing will be there. That is all that is going to happen. You will not get immortality. So this statement, Amritatvasya nashasti vittena, is one of the most important statements in all the Upanishads. So when Maitreyi heard this reply, that she will not be able to experience immortality, like all other people, rich people, she will die one day, she will become old and old age diseases will come. Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doshana darshanam. In the Gita, Sri Krishna says, almost all people, animals also, plants also have to go through these phases of life. Janma, mrityu, jara, vyadhi. They are already born. Birth itself was a painful experience, though fortunately we don't have memory of that. When we were infants, what could we do by ourselves? We were so helpless. For everything we have to depend on the mother. For an infant. And if the infant has stomachache or earache, it does not know. It simply cries. Mother has to guess. So that stage is, and that is Janma. And then Mrityu, death is inevitable. Once you are born, we have to die. That's also good. If we live for long, it is not a really good experience in old age. Jara means old age. Old age problems, not many of you, me I definitely know from experience. Old age problem. Vyadi. Vyadi means diseases of the body. But it's of the mind also, dementia, Alzheimer's disease. Those things will come. So this is inevitable in human life. So he says, there is no hope of immortality. Immortality is not at the physical level. Body will not be immortal because it is made of matter. Body is made up of saptadhatus, matter. Matter will perish one day. Not only matter, it is an assemblage of many different components put together and held together. This body, which is called Kshetra in the Gita 13th chapter, is an assemblage of many different components brought together, put together, somehow held together for some time. Anything that is an assemblage is going to disintegrate into its components. Anything that is a combination of more than one is going to disintegrate in course of time back into its components. So the same thing will happen to the body. It cannot be immortal. Then what is immortality? Immortality is of the divine presence within us. The divinity is always there. God himself is present within us. We will study that in later passages. The divine presence is within us all the time, inherently, is unchanging. Everyone has. No one is an exception. Many places in the Gita you will come across statements where Sri Krishna says, the divine presence is within you. That is the truth. If you experience that divine presence, will be immortal. At the body-mind level, there can be no immortality. And money cannot bring that knowledge of the self. You have to go through spiritual disciplines. So that he says. Then she said 243 on page 2. Sahovacha Maitreyi yenaham na amritasyam kimaham tena kuryam. What shall I do with that which will not make me immortal? Money, possessions, property, fame, good health, beauty, good looks, youth, all these things, they will not bring us immortality. They will fade away with time. What do we do with those things? Some people pursue them because they don't know that there is another way to become immortal. But she doesn't want to do that. What shall I do with all this money and wealth and all those things, which will not grant me immortality? Yana amrita nasyam. Yadeva Bhagavan Veda Tadeva me bruhi. She says, tell me, sir, of that alone which you know to be the means of immortality. He is Yajnavalkya is a Brahmajnani. He knows his divine nature as, his true nature as divine. He has experienced divinity. He is a Brahmajnani, knower of the self. That she wants to know. Whatever you know that can grant immortality, that I am interested in. I am not interested in this gold coins and cattle and all those things. She rejects them. That is a very big decision that Maitreyi makes. Then 244, what Yajnavalkya says. Sahovacha Yajnavalkya Priyabata Are Nasati Priyam Bhashase Ehi Asva Vyakyasyam Itite Vyachakshanasya Tume Nididhyasasva Iti. Very interesting statement. Yajnavalkya says, my dear, you have been my beloved even before. And you are saying what is after my heart. Priyam Bhashase. Priya, you have always been a very dear wife to me, and your words are very dear to me. Ehi, come. Asva, sit down, come near me. Vyakyasyami, I am going to explain knowledge of the self, Brahmajnana to you. Vyakyasyami. When I am saying that one, Yachakshanasya me nididhyasasva. You pay attention and meditate with concentration on what I am going to say. What Yajnavalkya is going to say about the nature of the divine self is something that has to be heard very carefully, with full attention. Something that is heard has to be reflected upon gradually, iteratively, many times, repeatedly. We have to reflect upon what we hear or what we read. And that reflection, if properly done, will become deep meditation. Nididhyasasva. Nididhyasana means deep meditation. In that deep meditation, that will culminate into samadhi, and in samadhi, knowledge of self will be experienced. That is the process. We'll come to that. Here, I'm going to make one change. We go to the last two lines of 245 in passage 245. Last two lines printed in bold face. Atma va are drashtavyaha shrotavyaha mantavyaha nididhyasitavyaha. Maitreyi Atmanova Are Darshanena Sravanena Matya Vijnanena Idam Sarvam Viditam. This is very important statement. Here, Yajnavalkya in one sentence has given three things. He has given the goal of human life. Being born as human beings, what are we supposed to do with ourselves? We can waste this precious opportunity of human birth in pursuing worldly things. Then one day death will come, nothing. Or we can use this greatest gift of human life that we have been granted to reach the highest goal, namely to know our divine nature and become immortal. So he says, this Atman, Atmavare Drashtavya, it has to be known. Drishti means not just seeing with our eyes, experiencing. In Vedanta, we are not talking about theoretical knowledge. Anybody can read any Upanishad and say I am Brahman, anybody can say, but does not mean anything. We have to actually experience our divine nature. That is the goal of human life. Drashtavya, Srotavya. Then the goal is to know our divine nature, experience our divine nature. Then how do we reach that goal? The method consists of three steps. The method to reach the goal of experiencing our divine nature consists of three steps. Those three steps are mentioned in this sentence. Srotavya, Sravana means you have to hear about this nature of the Atman from a qualified teacher. Hearing means we can read also, but preferably hearing directly from an illumined teacher. In the Vedanta, great emphasis is placed on the need for an illumined teacher. You can read about Brahman in books also. Nowadays everything is in computer, YouTube, everything. But the best way, most effective way to know about our true nature is to hear it from an illumined teacher. That is Sravana. First step is Sravana, methodology to reach the goal. Second step is Mantavya. Manana means reflection. This we do in our regular academic studies also. Supposing you are taking a course in physics or archaeology or some course you are taking. Then how do you proceed with your studies? You, in your textbook, you read a small portion, a section of a chapter, read it a couple of times, and then you think about what you have read to understand what it means, and then you do the exercises at the end of the section to get a firm hold of the knowledge that you have gained. Similarly, three things have to be done here. First, hearing from a qualified teacher, Sravana, and that Sravana must be done repeatedly. Once if we hear, our attention is very small. When we give a lecture, hear a lecture, how much of we retain by the time we leave the lecture hall? Very little remains in our mind. We have to hear repeatedly, Sravanam. Then after hearing, we have to think about it, analyze it in our minds to understand deeper meaning. That is Mananam. Mananam is reflection of what we have heard. When we hear, we get the verbal meaning. When we read, we get the verbal meaning. But the deeper meaning may not be always available to us by only hearing. We have to get the deeper meaning. What does it really mean? We have to close the book and reflect on what we have read. That is Mananam. Repeatedly this has to be done. When Mananam is done properly, Nididhyasana means deep meditation. Then all other things from our mind will be disconnected. Only thought of one thing remains in your mind. That deep meditation has to be done. Nididhyasana leads to superconscious awareness, Samadhi. In Samadhi you experience our oneness with the divine. That is the process. 3 steps. Sravana, Mananam, Nididhyasana. And then Atmanavara Darshanena Sravanena Matya Vijnananitam Sarvam Viditam. In conclusion, not this, next page, translation in the next page. In bold page. This self, my dear Maitreyi, top of page 3. This self, my dear Maitreyi, should be realized, should be heard of, reflected on, and meditated upon. By the realization of the self, my dear, Through hearing, reflection and meditation, all this is known. Sarvam idam viditam. Everything will be known. That is the passage. Now, in the middle, there are a lot of sentences which you skip. We'll go to that. We'll go to 245. Passage 245 and page 2. Sovasa namare patih kamaya patih priyo bhavati atmastu kamaya patih priyo bhavati. There are 10-12 statements like that. The question addressed here is, what is true love? People say, I love you, and then that love is one kind of love. There is love, of course. There is love, but that is not true love. Because generally when two people say, I love you too, their love generally, there are exceptions, generally based upon eccentric consideration, not intrinsic considerations. That person whom I love that person because that person has some quality which appeals to me. That person has some quality that makes me happy. Atmastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. That person is good looking, youthful, comes from a good family, has good education, has good sense of humor, has a good job. All these qualities make me attracted to that person. These qualities are the basis for that love. But these qualities are all changeable things. Youth will fade away. Person has a lot of dimples, then dimples become wrinkles. Then what happened to the beauty that attracted you to that person in the first place? That person has a good job, job is also not permanent these days. So those are changeable external qualities. That kind of love is also love. There is no doubt they love each other, but that is not the kind of love that he is talking about. Atmanastu kamaya patih priyo bhavati. He says in the first sentence, Patyuh kamaya patih priyo bhavati, navare patyuh kamaya patih priyo bhavati, atmanastu kamaya patih priyo bhavati. To a wife, pati means husband. Husband will become dear because atmanastu kamaya. The same self is present in the husband as in that person who loves that. If we recognize that divinity present within both of them, that love is really true love. True love means loving somebody not for how they look or what they have or what they do, loving that person because see the same divine presence in that person. That is true love. Same thing about why a wife becomes dear to a husband. Nama are jaya kamaya jaya priya bhavati, atmanastu kamaya jaya priya bhavati. Jaya means wife. A husband is attracted to a wife not only because of her good looks or other qualities, but because of the divine presence in that wife. That is the true attraction. What makes everything dear to us, property, money, children, everything is because the divine presence in everything. Asti bhati priyam. These three things they say about the Atman. Something that is always there, asti. Atman is always there. Bhati is something that shines. There is something that glows in everything. Something that makes everything function. Priyam, everything is attractive because of the divine presence in everything. The same thing applies to children. Putranam kamaya putra priya bhavanti. Children become dear to us because of the divine presence in the children. Vittasya kamaya vittam priyam bhavati. Money, property, possessions, house, car, etc. Brahmana kamaya brahma priyam bhavati. Brahmanas. Kshatrasya kamaya kshatram priyam bhavati. Kshatriyas. There are some qualities which make them attractive. Lokanam kamaya loka priya bhavanti. All the worlds, heaven, this loka, heaven loka, indra loka, and so many other lokas are there. They're all attractive to us because the divine presence in them. Atma lokanam devanam kamaya deva priya bhavanti. Bhutanam kamaya bhuta priyani bhavanti. Sarvasya kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Concluding statement. Everything becomes dear to us because of the divine presence in everything. That's the nature of true love. In the Narada Bhakti Sutra, there's one aphorism. Sometime back we studied here, I think, Narada Bhakti Sutra. There Narada says, true love is love that is, the main feature of the true love is the beloved's happiness, not my happiness. I should love somebody because I want that person to be happy. I'm not seeking my happiness in that relationship. I'm seeking that person. That is called Tat Sukha Sukhitvam. Tat Sukha Sukhitvam means for Radha, Radha had great love for Krishna, and that love was seeking Krishna's happiness. Radha did not say how much happiness I get by being with Krishna. She always says how much happiness can I give to Krishna, make him happy. That's Sukha Sukhitvam. That is the nature of true giving, not seeking happiness for oneself, but giving happiness to the beloved person. That's Sukha Sukhitvam. That's the nature of true love. Now we move on a little bit. Now, after explaining all these things, we are skipping a few passages. You notice the numbers here. On page 3, passage 2, 4, 14. Still same conversation between Yajnavalkya and Maitreyi, but we have skipped a few passages if you notice the numbers. Here Yajnavalkya describes as much as can be described in words the nature of that ultimate reality which is called Brahman or Atman. What is that Atman self we are all talking about in the Upanishad? What is that? The divine presence within us. It cannot be explained in words. In words we cannot explain even ordinary experiences. How to explain in words the nature of the divine presence within us is not possible. But we only have words are only the means of communication we have at this stage. Therefore, as much as is possible, Yajnavalkya is explaining the nature of the divine presence within us, or nature of Brahman is explaining in this passage 2:4-14. Why can't we explain it in words? We can't, because experiences cannot be put in words. Supposing I give an example. Why we cannot explain in words our experiences, ordinary experiences? Now, supposing you have an American friend, was born and brought up in this country, and you came from India. In India, we know what is a jackfruit. You know jackfruit? Nowadays it is available here also. Jackfruit. And you say to that friend, there is something called jackfruit that is very tasty. You say like this to the friend. He says, what is jackfruit? Is there a fruit called jackfruit? John fruit, jackfruit, like that one? Because he has no idea. It's not grown here. You don't see jackfruit here. So he says, how does jackfruit taste? Your friend is asking you, how does jackfruit taste? How will you explain the taste of jackfruit fruit? You have eaten jackfruit lot of times in India. It's available. You have eaten many times. You know the taste of jackfruit. How will you explain to your friend in words the taste of jackfruit? You can say jackfruit is sweet. He will have sweet like apple. No, it's sweet like pear. No, sweet like sugar. No, jackfruit sweetness is different. How will you explain in words the taste of jackfruit? You can't. Then what is the way to make him know the taste of jackfruit? How will you make him know the taste of jackfruit? You have to go to the Indian store or Korean store or somewhere. Nowadays they sell segments of jackfruit, not canned but real. Bring that one, show it to this how jackfruit looks, and open it and give a part of it, and you will tell, oh, this is jackfruit. Cannot be explained in words. All the experiences cannot be put in words. Then how can you put in words the experience of our divine nature? You cannot. That is why they say you have to learn only by experience. Only by experience you have to know your divine nature. But then words are necessary. How else can you communicate without words? So these words are used here. What is the way to know experience ourselves? By doing spiritual practice, sadhana. By doing sadhana, spiritual practice, we have to experience, then we know the truth. But to do that one, we need some kind of a starting description. So this description is given here. So 2:4-14 is a long passage. Yatra hi dvaitamiva bhavati Taditara itaram jigrati. Where there are two, Dvaita means more than one. When there are two objects, then one can experience the other. You can smell nice when coffee is brewing in the kitchen. You are in the bedroom, you get the nice aroma of coffee brewing, very nice. Because coffee is some separate object from you. It's a different object. If there are two objects, one can experience the other. Jatrai dvaitam vimvati taditara itaram pashyati. I can see that object. If it's an object outside of me, I can see it. It has name and form, dimensions, color, all those things we can see. But Atman is not outside of me. Atman is not a different object. It is me. How can I see myself? I can see my body. I can see my sense organs, hands and feet. But how can I see the self? Because self is the seer. There is nothing other than that. Taditara itaram pashyati, taditara itaram shrunoti. I can hear sound. If there is another person, if that person speaks or sings, I can hear that sound. So duality must be there. But Atman, there is no only one Atman is there. And I am there. There is no way to hear Atman. There is no way to see Atman. There is no way to speak to the Atman. Taditara itaram abhivadati, speaking. Taditara itaram manute, I cannot think about that because it's even subtler than the mind. Mind also is a limited instrument. We can think about all kinds of things, but we cannot capture in our thoughts Brahman. Is beyond thought. There is a nice passage in the Taittiriya Upanishad. There the Rishi says, Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. What means speech? Manas means mind. Yato vacho nivartante. Aprapya manasa saha. Manasa saha means mind and speech both went to capture Brahman. Aprapya, without being able to express Brahman in words, without being able to think about Brahman in thoughts, they come back, failed in their mission. Nivartante. So it is too subtle to be known by the mind, too subtle to be described in words. Taditara itaram vijanati yatrava asya sarva atmaiva both tat kena kem jigret. Everything is that Atman, only one Atman is there in all of us. Bodies are numerous, infinite number of bodies. People bodies, animal bodies, plant bodies, inanimate, all how many bodies are there in the universe? There is no limit, infinite number of bodies are there. Bodies not only human beings, animals and plants, planets, this earth, many other planets, many other stars, many other galaxies, how many are there? How many insects, how many trees? Infinite number. But in all those infinite number of bodies, only one divinity resides, the singular. Atman is only one. Bodies are many. This is explained easily, more clearly in the Upanishads. In the Upanishad, 13th chapter, you can make a note of this if you are interested, second verse, chapter 13, second verse. There, in simpler terms, it is explained. How in infinite number of bodies, one Atman resides. There in the Gita, Sri Krishna says, Kshetrajnam chapi mam middhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Kshetra means the body, any body. Human body, animal body, plant body, and inanimate bodies, stars, planets, everything. All included. Earth, air, ocean, mountain, everything. All that bodies. Sarva kshetreshu, in all the bodies, wherever in the whole universe, Mamekam kshetrajnam vidhi. Know me to be the one indwelling spirit. Supposing you go to a kitchen or a chemistry lab, so many different containers are there, different shapes and sizes and names and functions. In all the containers, empty space is there. Containers are how many? Any number, infinite number. And all the containers are only one space, space is only one. Whether it is in this small cup, or in a big pot, or in this room, or outside, space is only one. One space occupying infinite number of containers. In the same way, one consciousness, one Atman, present in all the infinite number of bodies all over across the universe, entire universe. There is always singular. There was a famous physicist, Erwin Schrödinger, and he wrote a book. In that book, only one sentence I remember. He says, for consciousness, there is no plural, only one consciousness. There is no plurality of consciousness, only one. That infinite, universal consciousness is present in all the bodies as the indwelling spirit. Therefore, Sarvam Atmaiva Bhut, everything is at Atman. Tatyena kim jigret, how can you know the by sense organ jigrat? Grana means there's no smelling. Tatyena kim, how can you see that Atman? Because it's too subtle to be seen by the ordinary eyes that we have. Kena kim shruniyat, with what instrument can I hear the Atman? Kena kam amivadet, with what instrument can I communicate with that Atman? Kena kim manvita, how can I know that once beyond the mind also? That kena kam vijaniyat, how can I know that one? Yena idam sarvam vijanati kiptam kena vijaniyat. Then comes the last sentence, Vijñātāram are kena vijaniya. That's the printed in boldface. That's the concluding sentence, very important sentence. How can we know the knower? For me to know something, that object must be separate from me, outside of me. Then I can know that one. I can see that one. I can communicate that one. I can touch that one. But if the object is myself, not the body, myself, not the body and mind, but deeper within the consciousness within me, how can I know? That is the knower. That subject. Everything else is object. That is the drashta. Everything else is drashya. So that Atman cannot be known in the way that we know other objects of this world. Then how to know that one? We have to know that one by going deep in Nididhyasanam, then transcending the awareness of the body, mind, all sense organs, the whole world and everything. Then we know that we are there. Then there is no you, me, there is no separation, there is no duality. That experience cannot be explained in words. Even by those who have the experience. Somebody who doesn't have that experience, how can we say? Sri Ramakrishna used to experience samadhi every day, on a daily basis. Then when he came down from samadhi, some people who would sometimes ask him, Thakur, when you went into samadhi, what did you experience? Then he had the experience. He could not explain the words. He would hold his hand like this near his throat and say, Divine Mother, he doesn't allow me. That was his way of saying. Cannot be put in words. That experience has to be known by experiencing only. Just like jackfruit taste cannot be known by describing in words, only known by experiencing it. The Atman is all to be known by experience only, not by reading it about Atman in the book. We can read in the books about Atman, Brahman, everything, but that does not give any idea of what that is. We have to know it from experience. How to gain the experience? What is the method? 3 steps as mentioned before. First, hearing from an illumined teacher, Shravanam. Then what we hear, we should reflect upon it repeatedly, Mananam. And Mananam will lead to Nididhyasana, deep meditation. In deep meditation, we transcend all physical awareness, body, mind, world, everything. Those who have that experience, they will merge in the only Brahman remains. There is nobody to ask, nobody to tell. Nobody to describe to, nobody to ask. All unitary consciousness. That is the kind of knowledge that Yajnavalkya was teaching. Maitreyi, Vijñātāram Kena Vijāniyata. Time we have?
10 minutes. 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. Now in 10 minutes, we will do something serious. We'll do one passage in 10 minutes. This is on page 4. This comes in the conversation between Yajnavalkya and Gargi. There were women saints those days. Gargi, Vachaknavi, Maitreyi, all those people were there. And they used to engage in scholarly discussions on sublime Vedantic topics with the scholars like Yajnavalkya and other rishis. So in this conversation between Yajnavalkya and Gargi asks a question and Yajnavalkya gives answer. The answer is in passage 3.8.8. 388 on page 4. Part of it, not all of it. What is the nature of the ultimate reality we call Brahman? What is it? How to describe it? He describes it in a negative way. Not this, not this, not this, neti, neti. Because there is no positive specification. When you specify something, then you are limiting it. Any object, if you give a specification, an adjective, then you are limiting it. You are negating all other complementary qualities. Supposing I say this board is white, I am describing it. It's a white board. Then that means I am negating all other qualities. It's not black, it's not blue, it's not red. Only showing one aspect of it. I am limiting it. So any specification or description limits the expression. But Brahman cannot be specified in any way. What will you can Brahman say? Brahman is big, you say. Brahman is infinite, Brahman is compassion. Like this we can say, but those are not accurate. So the way to explain Brahman is in following the method of Neti Nati, that passage 388, we'll study that one now. This is Yajnavalkya replaced to Gargi's question, not Maitreyi. Sahovasa etad vai taraksharam Gargi Brahmana abhivadanti asthulam. That means knower of Brahmana means knower of Brahman, not Brahmana caste. Knower of Brahman. Those who know Brahman by experience, they describe Atman in this way. Yajnavalkya says to Gargi. Asthulam, Ananu, Ahrasvam, Adirgham, Alohitam. All the words begin with means negating something. Asneham, Achayam, etc. Atama, etc., etc. Anantaram, Abhakyam. All these are negations of something. In the translation you see, it's easier to know it in the English. O Gargi, the knowers of Brahman describe it, it means Brahman, as the absolute. It is neither coarse nor fine. Sthulam means coarse. Anu means fine, very fine. Asthulam anadu. You cannot say Brahman is coarse or fine. It's not an object to be put in words, describing adjectives. It's an object, I can describe it. It is a subject. It's self itself. Ananu. Ahrasvam adirgham. It is neither short nor long. Hrasvam means short. Dirgham is not an object to say it's long or short. Adirgham. Alohitam asneham. It is neither redness nor oiliness. Alohitam is red. Asneham. Achayam. Neither shadow nor darkness. Atama. Tamas means darkness. Achayam atama. Avayu anakasham. It is neither space, it is neither air nor space. Vayu means air, it is not space. It's not all, any of these things. None of these things. Asangam, it is not attached to anything. If it is a physical object, it can be attached to something. If it is pure consciousness, if it is spirit, how can spirit be attached to anything? It is unattached. Asango, Hyayam, Purusha, like this later it will come. Arasam, it is free from taste. Agandham, it has no odor, it has no smell. Achakshushkam. Achakshushkam means it has no eyes. It's not a person or animal having eyes. Achakshushkam. Ashrotram, it has no ears. Avak, it has no speech. Speech, ears, speaking, hearing, seeing, touching, etc. These are all sensory experiences that a being can have. Animal or plant can have these things. But you cannot describe Brahman as an animal or a plant. It is pure consciousness. None of these things apply to that. Avak, amanaha, atejaskam, apranam, asukam, amukham, amatram, anantaram, abhakyam. All of these are negative specifications. It's not this, not this, not this. It is without eyes, ears or organs of speech and mind. It is non-effulgent. It is without vital force or mouth. It has no measure and is devoid of interior and exterior. There is no inside outside to that one. It does not eat anything, nor does anybody eat it. Nalati nadyate. It's not an eating means object. Eating means experiencing. We eat in 5 different ways. Not only through the mouth, we eat through the eyes. When you see something, I'm experiencing it. It's called eating. When I hear something, I'm eating through sound. When I taste something, I'm eating through taste. Those are all different kinds of experiencing objects. It's not an object to be experienced by the senses. It does not eat anything, nor does anybody eat it. Brahman is formless and attributeless. So the conclusion is, there is no way to describe Brahman in words. Whatever word you say, it will be inaccurate. So it is hopeless to try to describe Brahman in words. But for the time being, we don't have any other medium of communication other than through the medium of words. So we are limited to that. Then how do you know Brahman if you cannot describe it in words? Only by experiencing it. If I cannot describe jackfruit in words, how can I know jackfruit? By eating it, experiencing it. In the same way, Brahman is to be known by experience only. Anubhavaika vedyam this. How to gain experience? Lot of instructions are there. So many different paths are there. Bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, meditation. So many different ways. That has to be known by experience, and for that experience, some teacher is necessary to guide us in the proper way that is most appropriate to the particular seeker. That is the conclusion of this. So we'll stop here. We'll continue tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning we'll do the interesting story in the last part. The sound of the thunder. When in the rainy season, when there's thunder in the sky, you hear the sound. What does that sound mean? What does it represent in this context? We'll study the story tomorrow. So I'll say the closing prayer. The closing prayer is at the end, the last page. You can all join me in chanting the closing prayer on page 12. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from death to immortality. This from the Upanishad itself, chapter 1, section 3, verse 28. This Shanti Mantra comes in the Upanishad. Lead me from the unreal to the unreal means this whole physical universe is changing every moment and it comes and goes. That is unreal. Real means the self within the Atman, which is our true nature, that is always there, infinite, eternal, not matter but consciousness. Lead me from this to that. I am limited to the worldly life, acquiring things and tasting food and wearing dress and driving cars and getting money. If I limit myself to that, then I will always be limited. From this, I want to experience my spiritual divine nature. Lead me to that experience. From darkness to light. Darkness means not knowing our true nature. Ignorance is darkness. Mrityorma Amritangamaya. From death to immortality. That means everything is temporary in this. The whole world itself is temporary. Everything in the world is temporary. Someday will come, everything will end. This earth also will not be there forever. It will be another 5 billion, 10, 6 billion years. The sun also will not be there. Another 8, 10 billion years, sun will disappear. The solar system, this galaxy itself will disappear. Even now at this moment, so many galaxies are coming into forming. Some are disintegrating, some are joining, some are moving away. And they will not disappear at some point. So that is not permanent. From the temporary, lead me to the permanent. Something which is always there. That's the prayer. So tomorrow, what time announcement?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Go.